Hi there. Welcome to Lesson 3 in the series, What My Grandmothers Taught Me, this year's Horizon Bible Study for Circles. My name is Mary Layton, and I'm a member of Combined Circles 2 and 3 at First Presbyterian Church in Gastonia. I wonder if any of you have ever wondered where your next meal was coming from. Have you ever been so hungry and not known when you would eat again? Have you ever been forced to do something that you did not want to do, morally, ethically, but had to in order to feed yourself and your family? Did you ever need the protection of a man in order to survive? Well, these are the challenges faced by many women in the history of the world, even yet today, and definitely by two of the women that we are studying about, Tamar and Rahab. I'd like to begin by looking at the prayer on page 29, I think it is, Lesson 3 in our book, and there's a prayer at the bottom of the page. And if you have your books, you could look at it with me. Yes, it is page 29. Creating and loving God, as we read your word together, may we allow it to read us. As we enter into your story, may we understand our own stories with more clarity and wisdom. Help us to remember that you have always worked through the lives of ordinary women and men, with all their faults and failings, people like us. We begin our ordinary lives before you today. Transform our expectations so that as we study stories of the past, we may be open to your extraordinary future. So many of you who are watching may not even have a copy of this book, What My Grandmothers Taught Me, Learning from the Women in Matthew's Genealogy of Jesus by Merrill Blair. And perhaps you have the book but have not had a chance to read lessons 1 and 2 or 3. And I'm going to suggest that you do that because this is really, really an interesting study. And I think it's something that will be very inspiring to us. In Circle 2 and 3 last time, we really enjoyed talking about memories of our own grandmothers and what we learned from them. How to sew, how to cook, how to read, how to sit up straight. My grandmother, Sophia, was an accomplished seamstress, and I spent many, many hours with her, not always willingly, learning to crochet, knit, and cross-stitch. She was a very patient but determined woman. I still have many of the beautiful tablecloths, afghans, and placemats that she made for me, and I even have a tablecloth that she and I cross-stitched together. Now that was a project, and I think I was 10 years old. Now, I'm a grandmother, and I'm curious to know what my grandchildren will remember that they learned from me. I'm pretty sure not a whole lot of knitting. This study focuses on the women in Matthew's genealogy of Jesus, and that is in chapter 1 of Matthew. In the 42 generations between Abraham and Jesus, and I want you to think about this. There's 42 generations. Only 5 women are mentioned, and only 4 by their real names. They are Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, although she is not called by name. She's called the former wife of Uriah, and the Virgin Mary. They are all great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers of Jesus. And here is the startling thing. Of these 5, one pretended to be a prostitute in order to get pregnant, one was a prostitute, and one was an adulteress. Anyone who says the Bible is not interesting hasn't read it. We know from Lesson 2 that Tamar was married to the oldest son of Judah. And you remember Judah, he was one of the brothers who sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt. Tamar was a foreigner, and many distrusted her. She was married to the oldest son of Judah, and he displeased God and was killed. So Tamar was left a widow, and by culture and law at the time, she had to marry the second son. That was so she could have his protection and also have children to take care of her in her old age. This son displeased God also because he did not want to father children with Tamar. And that displeased the Lord, and he killed him too. So that left just one son, and he was too young to marry. Besides, Judah was getting a little worried about Tamar. Was she the cause of her son's dying? And he sent her home to her family and said he would let her know when the younger son was ready to marry. Tamar suspected that would never happen, and she was right. One day Judah came to her hometown on business, and she realized he had not brought the younger son. So she replaced her black widow's garb with the bright clothing and veil of a prostitute, sat in front of the city gates. I think she must have given Judah the glad eye because she seduced him, and eventually, in the process, she became pregnant. He had not recognized her, and he offered to pay her with a donkey. And she said, "That's fine, but I need a pledge from you until the donkey arrives." So he gave her what essentially was a badge with his name on it, a seal of identity. When Judah returned with the donkey, there was no prostitute at the gates, and he asked about her and was told, "There never has been a prostitute at this gate." So he said, "Oh well," and took the donkey home. In the meantime, she had put back on her widow's clothing. And when it became evident a few months later that she was pregnant and unmarried, furor aroused, and Judah was told that she was a wanton woman, and he summoned her to be put to death by burning, which is what happened to women who got pregnant out of wedlock. So she said, "Okay, but I think you need to see this first," and showed him the identity seal. And he said, "Ooh," and changed his mind. And when she gave birth a few months later, it was twins. Tamar gave birth to twins, Perez and Zerah. And since we're talking about genealogy, it is through Perez that we find the line of David and to Jesus processing. I had never heard of Perez or Zerah, and I find that there's quite a bit of information about them if you would like to follow that up. So that's the backstory on Tamar. So Tamar was a foreigner. She pretended to be a prostitute. She seduced her father-in-law, and she did it so she could survive. She had to have children to take care of her. And that's what happened in those days. So we fast forward a bit to the story of Rahab. Rahab was a prostitute. That was her job. Despised by many for her profession, she could not even live within the walled city of Jericho. She actually lived in the wall. In the wall. There was room for people to live, and she and her family lived in the wall. Just as Tamar was despised because she was a foreigner, Rahab is despised because of her work. She is an outsider, and she is vulnerable to assault. Why did she become a prostitute? It's not spelled out, but we must suspect it was to feed herself and her family. Apparently unmarried and unprotected, she found a way to take care of herself. Possibly not her first choice, but she had a large family of parents and siblings and other people who depended on her, and I guess they all lived in that wall together. We can't imagine that selling her body was what she really wanted to do, but it was that or starvation. If you have your Bible handy, please turn to the 2nd chapter of Joshua, and let's read exactly what happened in this story. Now, it's a long passage, so hang on. Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." And so they went. and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and they spent the night there. The king of Jericho was told, "Some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come only to search out the whole land." But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. And then she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they came from." And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you can overtake them. She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way to Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith, that you will spare my father and mother and my brothers and sisters and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." And the man said to her, "Our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land." Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the other side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, "Go toward the hill country, so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days, until the pursuers have returned. Then afterward you may go your way." The men said to her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to you. If we invade the land and you do not tie this crimson cord in the window through which you let us down, and you do not gather into your house your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family, if any of you go out of the doors of the house into the street, they shall be responsible for their own death, and we shall be innocent. But if a hand is laid upon any who are with you in the house, we shall bear the responsibility for their death. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be released from this oath that you made us swear to." And she said, "According to your word, so be it." She sent them away, and they departed. Then she tied the crimson cord to the window. They departed and went into the hill country and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers had searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men came down again from the hill country. They crossed over, came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him all that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "Truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands. Moreover, all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before us." And now we skip to Joshua chapter 6, verses 22 to 25. Joshua said to the 2 men who had spied out the land, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring the woman out of it and all who belong to her, as you swore to her." So the young men who had been spies went in and brought Rahab out, along with her father, her mother, her brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought all her kindred out and set them outside the camp of Israel. They burned down the city and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, Joshua spared. Her family has lived in Israel ever since, for she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. So that's the story. As we see, Rahab is a woman of great courage and determination. She is also clever. A woman with no wealth or family connections to protect her from the king's wrath, she still lies to him and protects the two spies. She offers a plan to them which works and allows Joshua and his troops to overwhelm Jericho, and in fact killing everyone within the gates. Because of her cunning, her entire family escapes unharmed while everyone else perishes. And eventually, we are told, she marries a man named Salmon, who may have been one of the spies, and gives birth to Boaz. More about him later when we learn about Ruth. There are so many questions to consider when we look at Tamar and Rahab. And these are questions that are currently bothering us as well in 2021. Foreigners and outsiders, people who are the other, are often treated with contempt in the Bible. Stop a minute and think to yourself, has that actually changed today? Can you give any examples or proof? Are people discriminated against in 2021 because they are poor, because of the color of their skin, because they have menial jobs, because they have foreign accents, because they worship differently? Do Christians make a point to follow Matthew 25 and care for the homeless, the orphaned, and immigrants? And if not, why not? What could our church do to make a difference? Could we be a Matthew 25 church? What do we automatically assume about the moral values of prostitutes? Do we consider how many young girls and boys are kidnapped or abandoned and forced into a life of prostitution? Now, this is true all over the world, but it's true much, much closer to home as well. Have attitudes about women's bodies changed? How are women more free today than in the times of Tamar and Rahab? In what ways are women still kept in bondage by laws or customs that are more preferential to men? How does it make you feel to learn that in the line of begats that led to Jesus, many of these women depended on deception, illegal acts, and immorality? That's a lot to think about. This lesson should give you a great deal to think about and should leave you on the edge of your seat to what happens in chapter 4. Let us conclude today's study by reading again the words of Rahab. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven and on earth below. So, a few more concluding questions here. Do you have that strong faith of Rahab? Do you extend to people who are not like you the loyalty and steadfast love that others have given to you? Is it easier to put money in the offering plate than to look in the eyes those who are in need? I will leave you with the challenge to end this time together with your own silent prayer as you consider how Tamar and Rahab, whom you may not have wanted to know, changed the history of our world. Let's pray quietly together for a moment. Amen. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to Lesson 4 being taught next time by Betty Davenport. Bye.